Okay, so you know what we didn't check if we have space on this card, but we'll find out together. That's what community is for. Hello, my internet friends. What is up? How is it going? How are you? I hope that you are well wherever in the world that you are. As we can all tell by the familiarity of this set, we are back in our childhood bedroom. So we have returned from our most recent stint in Latin America because it's an economy. We are in an economy right now. I apologize if this hiatus ruined anyone's day. I don't think it did, but in case, I apologize for the lack of posting. It was just normal burnout stuff, you know? I get really consistent for like spurts at a time. So we're back. We're trying to kickstart a new streak going. And also, I had something I wanted to share with you guys. I have a story for you. I was living in Bogota, Colombia, and you know, when you're a foreigner in a country where you don't speak the language, something that you often do is you seek out a community. You seek out people who have things in common with you, such as speaking the same first language. And so there are a lot of like foreigner meetups, language exchange meetups that you can go to, where it's not just foreigners, a lot of locals go to these as well. And I went to such a meetup and I was talking to this one woman. The seat next to me was empty, so just some guy sat down and everything was fine. For those blissful seconds before he spoke, everything was fine. He seemed like such a normal man. But then, internet friends, we get on the subject of dating in Latin America, and dating specifically as a foreigner. And this man proceeds to say to me, I'm about to say something sexist. And I don't know why I didn't have like such a strong internal reaction to that. I think that what I thought he was going to say next was something that probably wasn't that sexist. Because I've lived in liberal cities too long. I thought that he was maybe setting up like an ironic bit. Like he would just say something that was not sexist. And that would be like the comedy of it. But no, that's not what happened. Do you know what he said to the two women that he was talking to at this table? He says, and I quote, "Women, all women just want a man with money." This is what he says to me in the year 2025. And so he goes on to make just sweeping statements about my gender and telling me about all this data he's gathered from personal experience of dating in Colombia as a white man. And he complains to me how women expect him to pay for the first date all the time. He casually drops that he is also dating 18-year-olds and this man told me he is 40. That was also a fun lore drop. What else did he say? Oh, you know what he also said? You know what he said? He also said marriage is a scam for men. That's another word of wisdom. I'm gonna say, I'm not proud of this, but look, when I'm confronted with uncomfortable situations, I am a freezer or a fawner. And I just decided, you know what? I'm not the one to break this man out of his delusion. I'm not going to tell him that he's living in a simulation of his own making. And maybe he didn't set your filters to dating clearly like extremely young women who don't have financial independence. You might not have to pay for every date. Did you ever think of that? I'm going to sit here, I'm going to drink my beer, and hopefully he is done soon. So that way I can just move on from this conversation and continue talking to this woman that I preferred talking to greatly. And that didn't happen, and he just kept saying things that were awful and not back-upable, but I just couldn't process his delusion and his confidence. And I thought, God, how much money would I have right now if I had his level of delusion? I thought that I could wait out his monologue, because surely it had to end at some point. But it didn't. And then my beer was gone. I don't really know what happened next. I didn't make this conscious decision. But suddenly I was yelling at this man. You know, like I'm a 5'4" Asian girl with a very high-pitched voice. I don't think that I came across as super intimidating, but I was yelling at this man. I will say that I could have yelled at him more than I did. I say I yelled at this man, but I think I only lightly yelled at him. I think I'm glad that I yelled at him because it finally kind of stopped the conversation. And then it occurred to me, I don't have to be here anymore. I don't have to sit next to this misogynist man who dates 18-year-olds in a foreign country where his dollar goes way farther than the currency here. So I got up, I found a waiter, I paid my tab, and I left. So that seems like an extremely uneventful story, but here's the thing. This man is still in my brain. I think about this man every day. He has moved into my brain space and he does not pay rent here. And I am done. I am done with this man. I think it's just even though I exploded at him and yelled at him and argued with him, I still know in my heart that I didn't go as hard as I wanted to. It was just that classic, you're in the Uber home and you can think about every other thing you could have said to him. And I'm so mad that I'll never say those things to him. And he'll never know just what a piece of shit he is. He'll never know. But you know what? We accept the things that we cannot change, and we cope with them in our own way. And the way that I took control of the situation is that I wrote a short story about this man. When I said that I have a story for you, I meant that I literally wrote a short story inspired by this real interaction, and I'm going to read it aloud to you in its entirety right now. The story is currently called The Billionaire's Wife. I'm about to say something sexist. The woman was not as tense as she probably should have been upon hearing such a thing. She thought, perhaps naively, that the sexist thing that this man was about to say might not actually be that bad, or actually sexist. It could be a fake out. He could be about to say, all women are super emotionally intelligent, or something like that. Because the alternative was that her personal radar for gauging the values of a person she might want to date and have sex with was way off. But the next words out of his mouth were, the only thing that women care about is money. Oh, she thought, I guess you can't be right 100% of the time. She reached for her beer and chugged it until she felt her face relax into something passive. She didn't ask him to elaborate, but he did, making sweeping statements about her gender, the commonalities he noticed in all women he had dated, that they always expect him to pay for dinner, that women by a certain age plateau in maturity compared to men. That's a true thing that he said. He briefly theorized, based on his time in the military, that women could never understand the weight that comes from defending your fellow comrade in battle. He also said that. He breezily changed the subject when his date pointed out that women also serve in the military. I unfortunately did not say that in a moment. I just want to be fully transparent on that. That was something that my friend said while we were recapping this whole day. Here's the thing, he said what seemed like hours later. Somehow, every waiter had avoided eye contact with her during this time. I sense that you're not super into me at the moment, but I'm about to prove my earlier point, he pressed on. I'm going to tell you something that's literally going to change everything. Can't wait, she said. Sarcasm was a lost art on him. He continued. Look up Broadcom Industries. She raised her eyebrows. She was not about to do anything this man said. She wouldn't even wipe her nose if he said she had a booger hanging from it. Seriously? I know the company. I don't need to look it up. He raised his eyebrows right back. Do you know who the founder is? She didn't, but that seemed irrelevant to her. She actually did recognize the company name, as it had recently come under fire for its inhumane working conditions inside its factories. There was a pending lawsuit that likely wouldn't amount to anything of consequence. Why don't you cut the bullshit and tell me why you want me to look up some billion-dollar company? Because it's a surprise. You ever heard of a dramatic reveal? She wouldn't budge, not even if it would make for a more interesting story when she told her best friend about it later. Fine, he said, relenting. Clearly this reveal was incredibly important to him. So, Broadcom Industries. She nodded, arms crossed, reluctantly giving him permission to continue. My dad owns the company. And that's supposed to impress me? She asked. I think it does, but maybe your pride doesn't allow for it. The only thing that it does is make me feel less bad about doing this. And then she threw the rest of her beer in his face and left him with a check. And there's a 2-line section break now. Okay, and new scene. And the rest was history, laughed the billionaire Nepo baby. It was 2 years later, and the billionaire Nepo baby held a glass of champagne, toasting the wedding crowd. He turned, beaming, to the woman who had supposedly hated him after their first date. Right, babe? The woman smiled back at him. You were right, what can I say? Then she chugged the rest of her champagne. A toast, he called to the crowd, to being right! The crowd of the richest people on earth laughed and echoed the same sentiment, and for the rest of the night they ate and drank and reveled in an overabundance that they felt they deserved. 2 more years later, the billionaire Nepo baby fell ill. His wife was emotionally present through to the end, and their close billionaire friends and family so admired her dedication. But on the billionaire Nepo baby's deathbed, his wife came into the bedroom one night and confessed that she was the reason he was dying. He didn't believe it. Who would? He laughed, a bit of gallows humor, classic wife. Although this was the first time she had ever made a joke like this. She laughed with him, then slumped down into the chair next to him. Her demeanor was different from the past 4 years. Her poised, debutante straight back, something that had been coached into her once they were married, was gone. She spread her legs in the most unladylike fashion. She laughed longer than he did, devolving into deranged giggles. "What's so funny?" "You are a dumbass," she said. He flinched. She had never called him a dumbass before. "God, you really construct your own reality, huh?" He didn't understand. He admitted as much to her. "Of course you don't, you dumb little man." She slouched back in her chair again, as if fully relaxed for the first time. "God, I've waited so long for this." "For what?" She raised her eyebrows. She seemed confident he would get it, eventually. Dread condensed into a lump in his stomach. His body seemed to accept the truth before his mind did. That what she said was true, even if he didn't understand how it could be. He flashed back to their first ever date, the way she sat unrefined and uninhibited, the way she glared at him, her displeasure evident in her eyes. It was so unlike the woman she had been from their second date all the way to now, that he'd almost forgotten these things, dismissed them as a fluke. But now he was realizing that the last 4 years had been the fluke, the deception. He couldn't push away the denial any longer. But how? She shrugged. It's not so hard to poison someone. The hard part is just not getting caught. But why? Because you don't deserve this money. Because you and your net worth could do so much for this world, but instead you and your billionaire cult insist on hoarding wealth for no other reason except that you want it. You disgust me. But what are you going to do with it? I have plans. You never asked me what I do in my free time. I've been working on this for a while. You can't spend my money if I'm murdered. I don't plan on getting caught. But, his eyes darted around the room, not that he had anywhere to escape to. He was immobile by the disease, no, the poison, that had ravaged his body. Did you ever love me? Even a little? His voice cracked, even as he held on to this last thread of hope. His wife laughed, and it surprised him how soft it was. It was not unkind, this laugh. It was pitying. "Oh, sweetie," she laughed again. "Of course I didn't. You're a horrible person." He lay there, unable to feel, as his mind and body struggled to accept the reality standing in front of him. That the woman he loved was a mask, that he had never been truly loved back. "You said it yourself on our first date, remember? Women only care about money?" She scoffed now, and he heard it then, a little poison mixed in with the sweetness. "I guess you were right." With that, she leaned down somewhere out of his view and pulled the plug on his life support. In the weeks to come, the dead billionaire was lauded for dedicating his fortune to an array of causes around the globe. 1 year after his death, universal basic income was rolled out in all 50 of the United States. 2 years later, tuberculosis was eradicated in all of West Africa as life-saving drugs became widely affordable and available to impoverished communities. The ACLU and Planned Parenthood sued the U.S. government and reinstated abortion rights, thanks significantly to a tidal wave of funds supporting the organization's efforts and a national awareness campaign to sway public opinion on the issue. It had not been enough to solve all the world's problems. $1.5 billion can do many things, and it had, but it could not solve everything. For instance, Palestinians were still being starved in Gaza by Israel. Universal health care was not enacted in the United States. It was oddly comforting to the billionaire's widow that money couldn't solve everything. Otherwise, she might feel more anger towards the rest of the 1% who insisted on hoarding their wealth. She faded from the public eye, not that she had ever been meaningfully in it in the first place. The public did not know this, but she dyed her hair, got a couple piercings, and assimilated into the life she had had before she had committed to this master plan. Enjoying her idyllic sun-bathed apartment, she pulled out her phone, set her location to one of the most expensive cities in the US, and began swiping for her next investment. Done! Thank you for giving me a space where I feel comfortable sharing this short story with you. You guys acted really cool the last time I shared a short story that I wrote for a vlog. So I thought it'd be fun to do it again. What did we think? Before you tell me what you think, I'm gonna tell you what I think. Because I have a lot of thoughts. I felt like this first draft was helpful in terms of just like getting the emotion down and generating more like future ideas. First, basically I wanted to write out all the things I want to say to this awful man. And since I'll never tell him, I'm gonna tell you right now, is that like the reason why he thinks that the only thing women want is money is because the only thing he can offer is money. But that ended up not being like what I found most interesting about that interaction. When I came up with the billionaire idea, what I was more interested in was like, what could $1 billion fucking dollars do for good? You know, like what could $1 billion fucking dollars do for the world? And that's like where I got this idea of like a woman trying to seduce a billionaire so that she could kill him, take his money, and redistribute it like Robin Hood. Murder is very on brand for me also. I feel like that no repeat viewer is surprised that this short story took a murderous direction. Like things that I am thinking about for the rewrite is I'm trying to think about how does wealth change a person? I was talking about this with my tattoo artist. I got my tattoo redone. I have a tattoo on my shoulder. And you know, like they were tattooing me for like 3 hours. So like we had to talk about some stuff. We had to find a lot of stuff to talk about, so at some point I just kind of was like, I'm writing a story about a billionaire. I'm writing a story about a woman who seduces a billionaire and kills him. They were like, tell me more. And then they offered me some ideas, and that was really fun too. But like something that came up during that conversation is like, how does wealth change you? Like, what does wealth do to a person? Specifically this, you know, main character who like I hope is kind of like a relatable character to a majority of the people watching. You know, someone who just like isn't wealthy, isn't generationally wealthy, and is kind of angry at the state of the economy, at the state of the job market, at the state of the world. Meanwhile, the rich keep getting richer, you know? But I feel like she's going to end up in this extremely privileged world and she's going to be living in it for a very long time. And I'm wondering how that would change her brain chemistry, basically. Like if you're living in such privilege where like $20 and $1 is a negligible difference for you, how does that change you as a person? How can you be the relatable Robin Hood character that you set out to be in the beginning of the story, at the beginning of this plot? Because I don't think that there's a way to be that person. And the second thing I wanted to explore in a second draft is, you know, this woman is kind of God in a way, because when she takes over this man's money, she decides where that money goes. She decides what is important and what is not. Where she allocates her money dictates good and evil, right from wrong, basically, because she's obviously not going to donate to a cause that she doesn't agree with. And I thought that was like interesting and also scary. For example, I had written a scene in an earlier draft of this where basically she sneaks down, I don't know, to a different room late at night and she like kind of just donates thousands and thousands of dollars to charities. Any charity that she thinks is a good idea, she just donates them. You know, it's a negligible amount for the billionaire, but it is life-changing money for these charities. And then I thought it was interesting that like, oh, she gets to decide what charities get funding and which don't. She decides what matters and what doesn't. And I felt very uncomfortable by that idea. It just seemed like too much power for one person to hold. And I don't know how, for example, if I was in this situation, how I would disseminate this money ethically. I don't know how I would disseminate this money without people that I respect having a problem with it. Like imagine this goes viral on social media, like a woman like killed her billionaire husband and disseminated all his money to causes. And hypothetically, she doesn't get caught. Like let's just say hypothetically, this comes out, but she's not in jail yet. Or maybe she is in jail, but everyone's talking about it. Like imagine she's reading comments and sure there's probably gonna be some conservatives who are like, I don't know, there's probably gonna be some people who like hate her, but then there are gonna be probably people who like maybe she felt like were like her people from like, you know, back when she was like not a billionaire's widow. And she's like, oh shit, they have good points. Like I do feel like that's wrong that I did that. I don't know what that would look like, but I just felt like there's something there to explore. Let's say that this character is pretty aligned with like my values in terms of like I could agree with this character on a lot of things, but I come to find out that she is pro-life That's gonna be interesting because I'm a pro-choice. So that I feel like would be a really interesting like conundrum. You're like, oh my god, I am mostly aligned with her values, but then you're like, wait, but I don't align with that one. But she gets to play God because she's the one with the money. So I think that's interesting. And those are all things that I would explore in a second draft. The thing about it that I'm concerned about is that it doesn't seem like this is gonna be a short story. Seems like it's gonna be a story, but I don't know how short it's gonna be. And that's gonna be fun. But yeah, I have 3 minutes left of storage space, so we're gonna wrap this up right now. But I hope that you enjoyed this short story. I would love to hear your thoughts on it. I would love to hear some feedback you have for it. I'm gonna post this on a Google Doc that you can read, but you can leave me as many comments as you want. I totally welcome your feedback on it because it totally will make it better. But yeah, in the meantime, thank you for watching. Thank you for your patience as I come out of this video editing slump. And I cannot wait to see you in the next video.